Hey, welcome to A Foreigner in the Philippines. Well, for anybody who has been in on a few of our videos, you'll know that we got this this bigger truck we call the Big Blue. No surprise, it's blue and it's big. It's not actually that big, but it certainly has done the job, and we're very pleased with it. The next thing really would be to make the challenges for the truck a lot less than they are right now. But it's taken its toll because it's a really rough road down there, and as I've said on many occasions before, it's okay for all of you serious off-roaders to look at what we do and think that we're not that good at it. Well, the problem for us is that we not only have to make that trip down there, but we also have to continue on. So it's not just a question of doing the rough off-roading and then going back home and cleaning up and having dinner or lunch. It really doesn't work that way for us. We do that off-roading to get somewhere. So anyway, it's taken its toll of the truck. It was a lovely truck. It still is a great looking truck, but you can see that now it's a great looking dirty truck, and it doesn't take long for that to happen, and I'll take you and show you around and show you what the toll on our road has taken on our Big Blue. It stood up pretty well, but in the end, if well, have to look at it that if I was living down on the road, then this truck would really be in very nice shape. It would be very clean and polished, and the whole thing, you know, that all of that care that you take of a new truck. Well, it's new to us. So it's actually a Kia Bongo, and it's what in the Philippines it's what they call a, let me see, a recycled truck, you know. Surplus, that's the word for it. It's called a surplus, and it's a part reconstructed, rebuilt, refurbished vehicle. Comes out looking new, but of course it's not. This had done about somewhere around the 80 kilometers. That's what it had on the clock. Okay, and let me see, let's show you what we can, starting from the front. Well, first of all, you can see this is what you'd laughingly call the forecourt to Nanai's house. This is where we have to park. We're in the process right now of starting work on doing all of this, but that's another video. This is where we're coming in every night, and even here is a challenge. So, what can we show you? Well, going down there, you actually meet quite a few challenges, and as you can see there, we're bottoming out there. That's in the mud going down. It can often slide over onto the side of the well, the earthenware wall that we're looking at on the way down, and it can lean over, slide over very, very easily. So sometimes you may turn the steering wheel all you like, but it doesn't actually do anything. So that's the kind of mud that we're looking at every time we go down. And here's what it looks like underneath. It looks like something that came off the Titanic, doesn't it, as I've said before. Terrific amount of mud, and it all gets churned up and it sticks on there, and then it dries. Now, short of doing this 2 or 3 times a week, we can't keep that under control. So we do what we can, and that has to be enough. But you can see it's all the way through. A huge amount of mud and build up, and then it dries. Well, it is what it is. Now, I was thinking of putting that strap the other way around, so that instead of sitting on top of, it would be hanging underneath. That was one suggestion for getting a little height at the back here. and getting some space there. You can see that as we go down. This is not through people parking badly, this is through bashing our way down on that path, which is the infamous path. All of this stuff here, well, it's a people mover. It's a people mover. It is, like I say, it's a great shame, but it's what it is. We got it so that we could better move more safely the people that we take every Sunday. And there's my shovel for those shoveling times when you need it to get out. Our friend Brian gave us those seats, which I installed this morning. Just went down. As you can see there, I just got new brackets there. I got new brackets welded up. Then I drilled them, and with a self-tapping bolt went in. But the seats are really nice. They fold up for when we want to move stuff, and they're pretty good. I set them this far in, or well, set them this far towards the tailgate, so that people could still get in using that footwell there. I had hoped to put a top on this at some point, going from here. I can't actually, there we are. The sun's right in my eyes, I can't actually see what I'm looking at. But there, taking that shape there with those rounded off curves, and have a top made up that would at least bring us to about here. That's the thought. I'm going to get a quote on that fairly soon. So, what else? Well, what can we show you? I imagine that you cannot possibly know the way that this this place has seen. Now we've got some movement here. Now I found a rattle on this. Would you believe? I think I'm looking at something that was left in by the guy who put that on, and he's left a socket on there. I tightened the other side when it began to rattle. It's actually a really nice truck. We did put this should have a little knob on it, which would make it very easy to turn and put this down. We've never found any reason to put it down actually. We prefer to have the seat up, but I do have this little set of grips which we can put on there and put it down if we wish. But we're having something made up for this part. We're having something that's a little bit nicer than that and made up, because when we pick up kids on Sunday, this back area really takes a beating. It's mud everywhere. If you've got any doubts, I'll just give you that quick reminder. So, as I said, it's mud, and more mud. Now this is what comes from just being in normal use, as you can see. Now, I have to keep changing over the hubs. Yeah. So I had this little tool made up, and it changes it over really nicely for me. That might seem a little bit puffy because you can do it with just with your hands, but then you get a ton of mud, and where are you going to clean up when you're on the way into Taliban? That little fitting there is so that we can charge our phones and the laptop. There's actually something wrong with it at the moment. Either the cigar lighter has failed, or this cheap little, I think it's a fairly inexpensive thing. I wish I could go out and buy another one, but I don't have a place where I can do that. Our good friend Stephen from Hong Kong actually gave us that one, and he gave us another, but we can't find it. Beth has it somewhere safe. It's not getting worn out, and it's not getting overused. Actually, it's not getting used at all, is it? There's my wife's slippers, which she puts on when we get to the gig, wherever that is. See, but it's actually very nicely done. To save those back seats, because they get the worst beating, that's when we pick people up on Sunday, and oh gosh, there's usually about 15 people crammed into here, men, women, children, and we're having something made up so that at some point or other, when we get a better vehicle for the church, then we won't have to do it in this vehicle. But having said that, my big end of the week, or beginning of the week, whichever you want to put it, is Sunday, and that's my Sunday driving job. And I really love my Sunday driving job. So what are we looking at here? It's got air conditioning. Air conditioning is still working. That little knob always falls off. This is one of the things that you find with a surplus vehicle, is that it's put together, well, the thing like I just showed you, there's a socket being left on one of the nuts. Now I did find at one point, every time we went over a bump, I heard this big bang in the back and wondered what the heck that is. So one day I just went round and checked all the nuts and bolts on the back, and sure enough there are 4 quite heavy duty bolts, nuts and bolts, which are holding on the truck bed. And they were all finger tight, so there's a bit of play in them. They're all finger tight, and I had to go around, no big job, but I went round and tightened all of those up, and it doesn't bump and belt now. Unfortunately, all of this, as you can see the scratches. This is where we're doing our off-road driving, and especially when we go up and do a delivery or a collection of wood, which we're going to use on one of the houses, and as soon as we're up in the mountains, we go through these often narrowing roads, and it scrapes and scratches along here. If you're going to cry about it, well, you wouldn't be able to do it. And that's my feeling. It's just a truck, and it's doing its job, and if it's not as pretty as one of those trucks that you might see on the road, which has had love and attention lavished on it, well, that's the way it goes. So what else can I show you? The damage that we've suffered. As you can see there, look, there's a break in the bumper, but the bumper's made of plastic. What's the idea of that? The bumper made of plastic. So anyway, it bottoms out. That's the first thing that bottoms out, as you can see, on both sides. So both corners are done in. It's unavoidable. I think actually it would benefit from having stiffer shock absorbers, because we do seem to bounce quite a bit. That's what puts that bumper down in the ground. There's a cross member there, and underneath that lump that you can see there, that is actually the steering box comes down. A very unfortunate design fault in my mind. The design should have led to having the lowest point on the vehicle, a 4x4 vehicle after all, having the steering box or steering mechanism linkage where it can hit, and unfortunately it does. Now on the top there, we were given this winch by our friend Brian. He brought 2 winches over from America when he came, and this is one of them which he brought over for us. It was installed by my friend Edgar. Edgar's man made up this whole unit which bolts straight onto the chassis, and that was, the man came out, amazingly, the man came out, he brought a a tape measure, that's all. He brought a tape measure, he looked at it, we worked out, looking at it on the opposite side, we put our hands in and said, well, it can go here, and there's the cross member under here. Don't know whether you can see what my fingers are actually whacking on. It's not the same on the other side, so we said, well, why don't we put it straight onto there and really reinforce it, and that's exactly what he did. Well, all that he did was look at it, measure it, keep the measurements in his mind, and amazingly, that's what turned out. It's not the prettiest thing that you've ever seen, but it does work. We haven't had it the electrics put in yet, but it was well made, and it's had extra bolts. It only had 2 bolts holding the winch on, but he's actually put 6. So 2 bolts has been replaced by 6, and have to put some oil on that fairly soon. The electrics are a fairly straightforward thing, just haven't had time to do it. And as I've said before, what's going to happen is that there's going to be a bar that's going to go along the whole of the front, and a few other things that really need to be done. As you can see, we've got condensation on the headlight here. They need to be adjusted. They're always not enough light, and they're adjusted quite high at the moment, which I actually don't like to drive in the dark, not because I'm going blind, but because I'd like to stay alive. And the risk when you drive after dark in the Philippines is that there are so many people on motorcycles and they don't have any lights on. Now, that's all right for them, but for you as a driver, the risk of hitting one of them becomes quite high. Now you can see that when we've gone up against here, and it's also pushed in on this, well, this has to be pulled out, coming from here down here, because now the door is opening like so. Isn't that a nasty sound? Well, one of those things. Now this side, you can see that this takes more scratching and scraping along the side than the rest does. I gave up trying to keep this looking beautiful. It just doesn't last. This is not the result of weeks and weeks of failing to clean. It's really, it just happens very, very quickly. So if you look at this now, and this is where we live, we try to keep this in by putting in bags. Bajoy, can you be quiet, please? That's Bajoy, the quiet Bajoy. And we try to keep this, but it grinds. Now this whole area, we're now about to start work, and we'll be doing this. It's an aside, this from just talking about the bongo. But we're going to have to put a big concrete hard standing down on this whole thing. Down there, right down, this is much steeper than you might think. Somehow, my friend Brian and I have talked about this many times, and he's a second opinion. He says, well, I've actually walked that, I've driven it, and I've seen it on video, and the video just doesn't handle, it doesn't give the real impression of how steep that is. But if you look down there, that little house down there is just past the bridge, and it's actually very, very close, but look how far down it looks. Damn chickens. So that's the damage that we've suffered on our lovely truck. It's unavoidable. We are resigned to it. At some point when we get the road fixed, which is our big project for next year, well, we're in next year, aren't we? So our big project for this year is to get that road fixed. That will be a huge benefit to a lot of people in our community as well as us. So we're looking forward to being able to do that. Meantime, that's what it looks like. And no point complaining. That's the little doll mascot that Mr. and Mrs. O sent. Everywhere you go you can find something that was sent by Mr. and Mrs. O. Okay, thanks for looking in. This is a foreigner living a simple life in the hills and in the mountains of Burgos, and we thank you, I thank you, my wife thanks you for being part of our life. Bye for now.